To everyone else, Lena was Ava's biggest cheerleader. But behind that perfect friendship was a secret desire to steal the one man Ava could never imagine losing. Hi family, I need you to help subscribe to this channel to help us grow and to help us give you more interesting stories. Thank you. Now let's continue. They'd been best friends for almost 10 years. Ava and Lena met in college, two girls from completely different worlds who somehow fit together like they'd been cut from the same cloth. Ava was the calm one, soft-spoken with a warm smile and that effortless kind of beauty people noticed even when she wasn't trying. Lena was louder, bolder, the kind of girl who walked into a room and expected everyone to look. Together, they balanced each other out, or at least that's what everyone thought. In the early days, their friendship was easy. They shared clothes, secrets, and late-night dreams about love and success. Ava used to say, "We'll both make it one day," and Lena always smiled and said, "You bet we will." But deep down, Lena hated how easily things came to Ava, how doors just opened for her, how people just liked her. Then Cole came into the picture. Ava met him at a charity gala, one of those events where everyone pretends to care more about the cause than about being photographed. Cole was charming, in that quiet, confident way that made people listen when he spoke. He wasn't the type to brag about money, but you could tell he had it. The watch, the driver waiting outside, the way people whispered his name like it meant something. When Ava introduced him to Lena, Lena's first thought was, of course he's perfect. Her second thought, the one she didn't dare say out loud, was, why does Ava get everything? From that night, things began to shift. Slowly, quietly, Ava fell in love, the kind of love that made her eyes light up when she talked about him. She'd call Lena and say things like, "He sent flowers again," or, "You won't believe what he did for my birthday." Lena would laugh, pretend to be happy for her, but every word cut a little deeper. She started noticing things she hadn't before. The way Cole looked when he smiled, the tone of his voice when he said Ava's name. She convinced herself she was just imagining it. But she wasn't. Cole liked Lena too, not in the way Ava did, not with love but with familiarity. She was easy to talk to, fun, teasing, unfiltered. And Ava, being the sweet soul she was, kept bringing them together. Dinners, brunches, random hangouts where Lena became part of their story. It wasn't long before Ava started saying, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Lena." And Lena would smile thinking, "You have no idea." There was one evening that changed the way Lena saw everything. Ava had invited her over for dinner, just a casual Friday night thing. Cole was there, cooking pasta in the kitchen while Ava set the table. Lena offered to help, but Ava told her to relax. Cole handed Lena a glass of wine, their fingers brushing for a split second. It was nothing, at least it should have been. But something in that moment lingered. Later that night, when Ava went to take a phone call, Lena and Cole ended up alone in the kitchen. The air was different. He smiled at her, that easy, relaxed kind of smile that most people didn't get from him. "You two are really good together," Lena said, trying to sound casual. Cole shrugged. "She's amazing," he said. "Sometimes I think I don't deserve her." Lena tilted her head, watching him. "Maybe you do. Maybe you both just bring out different sides of each other." He looked at her for a moment too long. Then Ava walked back in, laughing about something on the phone, and the moment vanished. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She replayed that small exchange over and over, his voice, his eyes, that smile. She told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong. But something inside her had already shifted. From then on, Lena started paying attention to details, how often Cole texted Ava, how long it took him to reply, how sometimes Ava complained that he was distracted. And every time Ava vented, Lena was there to listen, pretending to be supportive, pretending she didn't secretly love hearing about the cracks forming in their perfect relationship. Ava trusted her completely. That trust was what made it easy for Lena to step in closer, one small move at a time. Cole had a big business event coming up, a networking night filled with investors and media. Ava was supposed to go with him, but she got sick at the last minute. So she asked Lena to go instead. "Please," Ava begged over the phone. "He can't show up alone and you're basically family. Just go with him. Smile. Keep him company." Lena didn't even pretend to hesitate. Of course, she said softly. Anything for you. That night, Lena wore a sleek black dress. Nothing too revealing, just elegant enough to make people notice. When Cole saw her, his eyes flickered in surprise. You clean up nice, he said. Lena laughed. You sound shocked. I'm not, he replied, looking at her a little longer than he should have. Just impressed. The night went perfectly, too perfectly. They laughed, they danced, and for a few hours it felt like they were the ones who belonged together. When Cole dropped her off later, he thanked her again for coming. It meant a lot, he said. Lena smiled, looking straight at him. Anytime. The moment stretched, quiet, charged, dangerous. Then Cole looked away, clearing his throat. Good night, Lena. Good night, she whispered, watching him drive off, her heartbeat pounding in her chest. That was the first time she allowed herself to imagine what it would feel like to be the one sitting beside him, the one he held, the one he chose. And once that thought took root, there was no going back. The thought lingered long after his car disappeared into the distance. Lena stood by the curb, the night air brushing against her skin, and for the first time, she didn't feel like Ava's best friend. She felt like the woman who could take her place. When she got home, she poured herself another glass of wine and replayed the night in her mind. The way he looked at her, the way he laughed at her jokes, the quiet tension neither of them acknowledged. She told herself it didn't mean anything, but her reflection in the mirror said otherwise. Over the next few days, she tried to act normal. She texted Ava, checked up on her, even brought soup when she was sick. Cole stopped by once or twice, and every time he did, Lena made sure she looked her best, casual but effortlessly stunning. It was a dangerous game, and she knew it, but she also knew she was good at playing games. Ava, innocent and trusting, had no idea what was unfolding right in front of her. She was focused on wedding plans, the dress, the flowers, the endless decisions that came with marrying someone like Cole. Her happiness blinded her to everything else. One evening, Ava invited Lena to help her pick a wedding planner. Cole was supposed to join, but a meeting ran late. When he finally arrived, tired and distracted, Lena was the first to notice. She offered him a drink, asked if he was okay, and for a moment, their eyes met again. That same unspoken thing hanging between them. Ava smiled, oblivious. You two are getting along so well, she said, laughing. It makes me so happy. Lena smiled back, pretending to mean it. Later, when Ava went upstairs to take a call, Cole and Lena found themselves alone again. He loosened his tie, leaned against the counter, and sighed. She's been stressing about this wedding, he said quietly. Sometimes I think it's more for everyone else than for us. Lena tilted her head. You don't sound excited. He gave a half smile. I am. It's just a lot. There was a pause, heavy, intimate. Lena could feel his guard lowering piece by piece. You know, she said softly, you don't always have to be the perfect guy. It's okay to admit you're tired. He looked at her for a long second, and something in his expression shifted, like he saw her for the first time. That look stayed with her long after he left. From that day, Lena started showing up more, accidentally running into Cole, offering to help with errands, volunteering to check on venues whenever Ava couldn't. Cole tried to keep things casual, polite, but the tension between them grew tighter every time they were alone. Then came the night of Ava's bridal shower. The room was filled with laughter, champagne, and glittering smiles. Lena stood beside Ava, handing her gifts, hugging her, pretending everything was fine. But when she looked across the room and saw Cole watching them from the doorway, her stomach twisted. He smiled at Ava first. Then his eyes found Lena, and his expression softened just slightly. It was quick, subtle, but it was enough. That single glance set her heart racing. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Lena sat on her couch, scrolling through pictures from the party. Every photo showed Ava glowing with happiness, surrounded by love. And in one of the pictures, she caught Cole's eyes on her. A fleeting, almost invisible moment frozen in time. That was when she made up her mind. If she was going to lose herself, she'd rather lose herself to him. The next few weeks blurred into one long, dangerous rhythm. Ava was buried in last-minute wedding plans, and Cole was busier than ever with work. That gave Lena plenty of chances to be helpful. She dropped by his office with coffee, for both of them, sent funny memes when Ava complained about stress, and found small excuses to talk to him about anything. The weather, business, Ava's favorite flowers. Each time she tested the line. Each time she stepped a little closer. Cole noticed. He wasn't stupid, he could feel it. But he didn't stop it either. There was something thrilling about her presence. Something effortless compared to the pressure of his relationship with Ava. And maybe that's what made it so dangerous, it was too easy. One afternoon, Lena stopped by his office under the pretense of dropping off Ava's planner. He was alone, his tie undone, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion written all over his face. "You look like you need a break," she said lightly. He chuckled. "You sound like Ava." "Yeah, but I actually mean it," she teased, sitting on the edge of his desk. He laughed, shaking his head. "You're trouble, you know that?" She smiled, slow and deliberate. "Maybe that's what you need." The air between them tightened. Cole looked at her, really looked, and for the briefest moment his resolve cracked. Then his phone rang. "Ava." He turned away, clearing his throat, answering quickly. "Hey babe. Yeah, I'm fine. Just finishing up." Lena watched him, her stomach twisting with something sharp and unfamiliar. By the time he hung up, she was already standing. "I should go," she said softly. "Lena." She froze. He didn't finish the sentence. He just looked at her, eyes filled with the kind of tension that shouldn't exist between a man and his fiancé's best friend. When she walked out of that office, she wasn't confused anymore. She knew exactly what she was doing, and how far she was willing to go. That night, she called Ava, pretending everything was fine. They laughed about random things, talked about wedding decorations, and made plans for brunch the next morning. But when the call ended, Lena just sat there, staring at the wall, heart racing, her mind already rehearsing how she'd make her next move. Because now it wasn't just envy, it was obsession. Lena didn't sleep that night. Her body was tired, but her mind kept spinning, replaying every glance, every almost touch. She could still hear his voice when he'd said her name before stopping himself. The sound had been soft, unsure, but it told her enough. By morning, she'd already made up her mind. She wouldn't wait for chance anymore. She would create the moments herself. The next day, Ava called. "Brunch at 11? "Sure," Lena answered, forcing her voice to sound light. They met at a small cafe Ava loved. White chairs, soft music, the kind of place that made you feel safe. Ava was glowing again, the way she always did when she talked about Cole. "He's been a little distant lately," she said, stirring her coffee. "But I think it's just work stress. The merger's taking up all his time." Lena lifted her cup to hide her smile. "Yeah," she murmured. "He did look tired." Ava sighed. "I just wish he'd talk to me more. I feel like I'm always the one asking what's wrong." "You worry too much," Lena said sweetly. "Men get quiet when they're overwhelmed. Give him space." It sounded like advice from a caring friend, but underneath it, the seed was already planted, space. The more space Ava gave him, the more room Lena had to move. When they left the cafe, Ava hugged her tightly. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Lena smiled against her shoulder. "You'll never have to find out." That night, she texted Cole. "Hey, just checking on you. Heard the merger's rough. Don't burn out, okay?" He replied a few minutes later. "Thanks. Long day. Appreciate it." It wasn't much, but it was a door, and Lena knew how to keep it open. Over the next few weeks, she played her role carefully. She never said too much, never pushed too hard. She became his quiet escape, the person he could talk to when the world felt heavy. She listened, joked, sometimes made him laugh until he forgot what he was complaining about. And every time he relaxed around her, the guilt in his eyes flickered a little less. Meanwhile, Ava grew more restless. She started canceling date nights, saying she didn't want to distract him. She asked Lena to check in on him when he went silent for days. It was almost too easy. One evening, Cole texted first. Still at the office. Everyone's gone. I might sleep here tonight. Lena stared at the screen, fingers hovering. Then she typed back, you shouldn't. Come over, I'll make you coffee and tell you bad jokes until you crash. She hit send before she could change her mind. He didn't reply right away. 5 minutes. 10. Then her phone buzzed. On my way. When he arrived, he looked exhausted. Tie loose, hair messy, shadows under his eyes. She poured him coffee, sat beside him on the couch. They talked for hours about work, about life, about everything and nothing. At some point, he leaned his head back and closed his eyes. You're easier to talk to than most people, he said quietly. Even Ava? She asked before she could stop herself. He opened his eyes, met hers, and said nothing. The silence stretched until she looked away, pretending to laugh it off. I'm kidding. He smiled faintly. You shouldn't compare. But they both knew she wasn't joking. When he left that night, the air felt different, heavier. He hugged her goodbye. A simple friendly hug that lasted a beat too long. She could feel his heart racing against hers. And that was the moment she knew she was winning. The next few days, she watched the cracks widen. Ava started complaining more about Cole missing calls, about him forgetting appointments. Lena pretended to listen, but she was the one feeding those cracks, gently widening them with every word. Maybe he's just under pressure, she'd say, then pause. Or, maybe he's scared. Scared of what? Ava asked one evening. Of not being ready, Lena answered softly, eyes down. You know how men get before big commitments. Ava frowned, uncertain. You really think that's it? Lena nodded, her expression carefully unreadable. I could be wrong. I'm sure he loves you. It was the perfect balance. A touch of reassurance wrapped in quiet doubt. Ava went home that night thinking too much, and Lena went to bed smiling. The next time Cole saw Lena, he was distant at first. Maybe guilt, maybe confusion. But she was patient. She asked about work, teased him about his caffeine addiction, acted like nothing between them had changed. By the time he left, he was smiling again. Later that week, Ava called her, voice trembling. Lena, I think something's wrong. He's been different. Different how? I don't know. Cold. Quiet. Like he's somewhere else even when he's here. Lena hesitated just enough to sound sincere. Do you think he's having second thoughts? Ava went silent. Lena quickly added, No. Forget I said that. He's probably just tired. But it was too late. The words had already taken root. The following days were chaos. Ava tried harder. Surprise lunches, sweet messages, calls that went unanswered. Cole pulled further away, trapped between guilt and attraction. And Lena, she kept herself close enough to both of them to watch everything unravel. Then came the night Ava called in tears. He canceled dinner again, she said, sniffling. I waited 2 hours. Lena bit her lip, pretending to sound angry on her behalf. That's not fair to you. I don't even know what's happening anymore, Ava whispered. Do you think he's seeing someone else? Lena's heart thudded once, hard. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to see Ava's perfect world crumble right there. But she forced herself to sound calm. Don't jump to conclusions, she said softly. If he is, you'll find out soon enough. When they hung up, Lena sat in silence, her own words echoing back at her. You'll find out soon enough. Because deep down, she already knew what was coming. She'd make sure of it. The next morning, Cole called her. We need to talk. Lena's pulse quickened. About what? About us, he said quietly. She didn't breathe for a second. Then she said, Okay. They met that evening in his car, parked behind his office. The city lights flickered through the windshield as he stared straight ahead. This isn't right, he said finally. I shouldn't even be here. But you are, Lena whispered. He turned toward her, eyes conflicted. She doesn't deserve this. I know, Lena said, leaning closer. But neither of us planned it. His jaw tightened. That doesn't make it okay. No, she agreed. It just makes it real. The air grew heavy. She could hear her heartbeat, his uneven breathing, the tension that had been building for weeks. Then silence. When his hand brushed hers, neither of them pulled away. Outside, the city buzzed, unaware of the quiet disaster forming in that parked car. Inside, two people who should have known better crossed the line they'd been dancing around for far too long. And somewhere across town, Ava was still awake, staring at her phone, wondering why the man she loved hadn't called. The rain kept falling long after words had failed them. Inside the car, the air still carried the warmth of everything they shouldn't have done. Neither of them moved. The only sound was the rain drumming on the windshield, hiding their shame from the rest of the world. Cole's hand was still on the steering wheel, knuckles pale. He wanted to speak, but language felt small compared to what had just happened. Lena sat beside him, heart racing, pulse trembling against her throat. The world outside was blurred, as if it refused to witness their mistake. He finally whispered that it should never have happened. His voice cracked halfway through, but his eyes betrayed him. They lingered on her like confession. She nodded, pretending to agree, though every cell in her body wanted him to say the opposite. When the rain began to soften, she quietly reached for the door handle. The silence between them was unbearable, heavy with unfinished truths. Cole didn't stop her. He only watched as she stepped out, his reflection faint on the glass. The night air hit her skin, sharp and cold, but the warmth of him refused to fade. She walked home that night soaked to the bone, each step echoing the same thought she was too afraid to say out loud. Something has changed, and we can't undo it. The next morning carried that same weight. Sunlight filled her room, but it felt intrusive, like light on a crime scene. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, trying to recognize the woman staring back. Her phone buzzed on the dresser, Ava's name. Ava's voice was soft, shaky, the way it always sounded when she was uncertain. She said Cole had been distant since the night before, that he barely spoke. She laughed nervously, asking if Lena thought he was stressed about work again. Lena forced a smile the phone couldn't see and said yes. Every word felt like a blade turning slowly inside her. As the day passed, the distance between Cole and Ava began to show. He missed dinner, canceled calls, and when he finally showed up at a family gathering that weekend, his silence said more than he realized. Ava tried to laugh through it, holding his hand too tightly, pretending nothing had shifted. But Lena could see it. The small gaps between their smiles, the tiny tremors of guilt whenever Cole's eyes accidentally found hers. It became their quiet secret, those stolen glances across crowded rooms, the tension that breathed between them when no one was looking. They didn't speak of that night, but it followed them like perfume, subtle yet inescapable. Lena told herself to forget. She repeated it every morning like a prayer that never worked. But forgetting was impossible when every message Ava sent was about him. How cold he had become, how distant he felt. Each confession drew Lena closer, feeding the dangerous truth they were both pretending to deny. Days turned into weeks, and Ava's worry became fear. She asked Lena to talk to him to find out what was wrong. The irony stung like fire. Lena agreed, knowing exactly where that road would lead. When she finally met Cole again, it was in the quiet safety of his office. The blinds were half closed, sunlight slipping through in golden slants. He didn't look up at first, just kept his hands on the desk like he was afraid of what they might do. She told him Ava was worried. He said nothing. Then, after a long pause, he confessed that he hadn't been himself since that night in the car. He called it a mistake, but his voice betrayed him again. Lena asked what he wanted. The question hung in the air, trembling, alive. He stood, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of her. His eyes searched hers, and the silence between them answered for him. When he kissed her again, there was no confusion, only decision. Every line they had tried to draw disappeared in that moment. Afterward, Lena sat there in the stillness, feeling both powerful and hollow. She had what she wanted, yet guilt clung to her skin like smoke. That night, Ava called again. Her voice broke as she said Cole had told her he needed space. She couldn't understand why. She said she felt like she was losing him. Lena told her not to worry, her voice gentle, practiced, lying. She said maybe he just needed time. But deep inside, she knew time wouldn't fix what was already broken. Days later, whispers began to spread. Cole and Ava were no longer the perfect couple they appeared to be. Their engagement was faltering. Friends noticed. People talked. And through it all, Lena stayed close, the quiet comfort, the listening ear, the steady presence Ava leaned on. The betrayal was complete, yet it didn't feel like victory. Each tear Ava shed left a stain on Lena's conscience, but she kept telling herself it was fate, not choice. Still, every night when she closed her eyes, she saw that car again. The rain, the silence, the moment she couldn't take back. The tension between them grew quieter but heavier with each passing day. Cole had become a ghost inside his own life, and Ava felt it more than anyone. The wedding that once felt so close now seemed like a faraway dream, covered in dust and silence. Invitations had been printed, fittings were underway, but the excitement was gone. It felt like everyone was pretending, holding their breath around something they could all sense but refused to name. Lena lived inside that storm. Every morning she woke with guilt. Every night she went to bed with desire. Ava still called her daily, still spoke of Cole with shaky hope, asking what she should do, how she could bring him back. Each conversation was a quiet torture, a reminder that Lena was the reason he had drifted away. Yet she kept playing her role, the best friend, the confidant, the calm voice that soothed Ava's fear while silently feeding her own. But pretending has a limit. Lies always look perfect until the cracks show. It started small. The way Cole avoided holding Ava's hand in public. The way his eyes lingered elsewhere even in her presence. People noticed even if they pretended not to. Friends whispered after dinner parties. Families exchanged glances that spoke more than words. Ava tried to explain it away, saying he was tired, overworked, distracted. But every excuse only deepened the truth she was running from. Lena watched everything unfold like a slow-motion collapse. Part of her wanted to step back, to stop this spiral before it destroyed Ava completely. But the other part, the one she tried to silence, wanted it to happen. She told herself it was too late to undo what had already been done. That maybe this was how it was always meant to be. One evening, Ava called again, her voice trembling. She said she felt Cole slipping away for good, that he had started canceling wedding meetings. She said he no longer looked at her the same. Lena could hear the tears hiding behind her words. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath before responding, telling her maybe it was just a phase. Maybe he needed time to figure things out. But deep down, she knew the truth. The distance wasn't temporary. It was the beginning of the end. Cole didn't try to fix it. He stopped pretending. Slowly, he began to spend more time away, choosing quiet places where Lena sometimes found him. They no longer spoke of what they were doing, they just existed in it. Two people bound by a wrong choice that felt too right to release. The guilt was always there, though. It followed Lena everywhere she went. It hid beneath her perfume, her makeup, her practiced smile. It appeared in every picture Ava sent her, every wedding update she pretended to be excited about. The closer the wedding date got, the more unbearable it became. Then came the night everything shifted. Ava invited Lena to dinner, saying she wanted to talk. Her voice sounded lighter than usual, calmer, like she had finally made peace with something. Lena arrived expecting another emotional conversation about Cole, but instead, she found Ava smiling, radiant, as if nothing had ever been wrong. She said Cole had apologized that morning, said he wanted to make things right, that he was ready to fix everything. Lena felt her stomach twist. She smiled back, pretending to be happy, but her heart began to race. Something didn't feel right. Ava reached for her hand and thanked her. She said she didn't know what she would have done without Lena, that she had been her anchor through it all. The words hit harder than a slap. Lena tried to keep her composure, tried to breathe through the guilt tightening around her chest. Ava's gratitude felt like a mirror reflecting every sin she'd tried to bury. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Ava's smile, her soft voice, her trust. Felt unbearable now. What had started as jealousy had turned into something darker, something that no longer even felt like victory. She woke before dawn, unable to stay still. Her heart felt restless, her mind clouded. For the first time, she saw the full weight of what she had done. She had taken something she could never truly keep. Cole's silence grew louder in the days that followed. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up anywhere. Ava was calm, believing things were improving. But Lena knew what was coming. The way Cole had looked at her the last time they met, distant, cold, full of confusion, was a warning. And she was right. A week later, Ava called her crying. Cole had ended the engagement. No fight, no scene, just a quiet conversation that ended years of promises. Ava was shattered. Her voice cracked as she said she didn't understand what went wrong. Lena listened, whispering comfort she didn't mean. When the call ended, Lena sat in silence. Everything she had wanted was now within reach, yet nothing felt right. There was no thrill, no satisfaction. Only emptiness. Ava stopped leaving her apartment for days. Friends tried to visit. She refused. She deleted her social media, ignored calls, and when Lena finally saw her, she looked smaller, like life had drained the light from her eyes. That image stayed with Lena. It followed her into her dreams, haunted her every time Cole touched her hand. She realized then that betrayal isn't just about what you take. It's about what it costs. Days later, Cole called her. His voice was calm but distant. He said he needed time alone, that everything had gone too far. He didn't sound like the man she once wanted. He sounded lost. She didn't stop him when he said goodbye. That was the moment Lena understood the cruel irony of her own choices. She had won nothing. She had destroyed the one person who truly loved her without conditions, and in doing so, lost the man she thought she needed. The silence that followed was louder than any heartbreak. Ava stayed away, healing quietly in her own world, while Lena lived with the echo of everything she couldn't undo. And yet, beneath all the guilt and regret, there was something else. A fear that Ava might one day learn the truth. Because if she did, a forgiveness would never exist between them again. Days turned into weeks, but the silence never truly lifted. Cole had vanished into the kind of distance that didn't need an explanation, and Ava had withdrawn from the world entirely. The city kept moving, traffic lights kept changing, people kept living. But for the three of them, time seemed to have stopped. Lena carried that stillness like a weight she couldn't put down. Everywhere she went, she felt the echo of her own choices following behind her. Coffee tasted bitter. Laughter felt heavy. Even the sun looked too bright on days when she didn't deserve warmth. Sometimes she caught herself checking her phone, expecting a message from Cole. But the screen stayed blank. He had left without anger, without closure, just silence. That kind of ending hurt more than shouting ever could. It meant he had nothing left to say. Ava's absence was louder. The once constant calls and messages had faded into nothing. Her voice, that soft, steady presence, had disappeared. Lena wanted to reach out, to ask if she was okay, to apologize for everything she couldn't explain. But how could she start a conversation that would break the only fragile piece left between them? So she stayed quiet, pretending life was moving forward, while everything inside her was standing still. Then one afternoon, she saw Ava again. It happened unexpectedly. Inside a quiet cafe on a street they both used to love. Ava was sitting by the window, stirring her drink without really touching it. Her hair was different now, shorter, lighter, as if she'd cut away the version of herself that once believed in forever. Lena froze. For a moment, she thought about leaving before Ava noticed her. But something stronger pulled her forward. Guilt, longing, the ache of unfinished stories. She approached slowly, heart pounding, every step filled with the fear of rejection. Ava looked up. Their eyes met for the first time in months. The silence between them was thick, but not angry, just tired. Ava gave a faint smile, the kind that carried both pain and acceptance. They sat together in that small corner, surrounded by the quiet hum of strangers. Lena didn't know what to say. She simply listened as Ava talked softly about healing, about trying to find herself again. about learning to breathe without everything hurting. She didn't mention Cole's name once, and that silence said more than any story could. Lena nodded through it all, offering comfort that felt undeserved. Each word from Ava was a mirror, a reflection of everything she had broken. When the conversation ended, Ava squeezed her hand gently before leaving. It wasn't forgiveness, not really. It was something in between, a fragile truce built on exhaustion. That small gesture lingered with Lena long after she left the cafe. It was the first time she realized forgiveness wasn't something you begged for. It was something people gave when they were too tired to hate. Weeks passed. Ava began to reappear, at small gatherings, at brunch with mutual friends, smiling carefully but genuinely this time. She didn't bring up Cole. She didn't ask questions. It was as if she had decided to leave that entire chapter buried in the past. But Lena couldn't bury it. Not when every reminder of him still lived in her mind. She sometimes dreamed of that night in the car. The rain, the silence, the decision that changed everything. It wasn't desire anymore. It was memory, heavy and cold. Then, one evening, she saw Cole again. It was at a charity gala, one of those glittering events where people wore masks of perfection. He was standing near the bar, his posture calm, his face unreadable. When their eyes met, it was like time cracked open again. He looked different. Colder, older, sharper around the edges. Success had found him, but peace hadn't. He spoke to people with practiced charm, yet his eyes carried distance. Lena felt her chest tighten. Every part of her wanted to walk away, but curiosity, or maybe closure, kept her rooted. When he finally noticed her watching, their eyes locked. The world seemed to blur for a moment. He gave a small nod, polite, detached, then turned back to his conversation. That simple gesture was enough to tell her everything. He had moved on, not to someone else but away from her, from what they had done, from the version of himself that allowed it. Later that night, she stood outside on the balcony, looking down at the city lights. The wind was cold, sharp, honest. She realized that some people leave not because they stop caring, but because staying would destroy them. And Cole had chosen survival over chaos. That thought stayed with her long after the night ended. It began to shift something inside her. A quiet understanding that she couldn't keep living inside the ruins of her own mistake. So she started to rebuild herself slowly. She began working again, surrounding herself with people who didn't know her story. She found moments of laughter that didn't feel fake, moments of silence that didn't hurt. Still, Ava lingered in her thoughts. Their friendship existed now like a faded photograph. Real once, distant now. Sometimes they exchanged short messages, checking in, keeping it polite. Neither of them mentioned Cole. It was as if they had signed an unspoken contract to never open that wound again. Months later, Ava sent a message saying she was moving to another city. A fresh start, she wrote. Lena replied with warmth, wishing her peace and happiness. When she read Ava's reply, a simple thank you and a heart emoji, she knew that was the end. The real end. Cole never resurfaced. Rumors said he had left the country, expanding his business somewhere overseas. Lena didn't try to find him. She let him exist in memory, where he belonged. A story that had burned too bright and too fast to survive reality. One night, sitting alone on her balcony, she thought about everything that had happened. The friendship, the betrayal, the love, the loss. She realized that what destroyed her wasn't jealousy or desire. It was the illusion that taking something from someone else could ever make her whole. She had learned the hardest truth, that some kinds of love only exist to teach you what not to do again. As the city lights shimmered below, she took a deep breath and finally allowed herself to let go. Not just of Cole, not just of Ava, but of the version of herself that needed to be chosen at someone else's expense. The night was quiet, almost peaceful, the kind of quiet that comes after years of noise. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt empty in the right way, not from loss but from release. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew this. She would never again build happiness on someone else's heartbreak. And maybe that was what healing truly meant. Months passed like gentle waves, and for the first time in years, Lena's life began to feel steady. The chaos that once filled her days had faded into a quiet rhythm. She worked, she laughed occasionally, and she learned how to enjoy her own company again. The guilt didn't disappear completely, it rarely does, but it no longer controlled her every thought. It had softened into something she could live with, like an old scar that hurt less when touched. Ava was gone now, living in another city, building something new for herself. Sometimes she posted pictures, sunsets, books, coffee cups, small moments that hinted at peace. Lena never commented, but she always watched. It wasn't envy anymore, just gratitude that Ava had found light again. Life was beginning to make sense, until fate decided to stir what she thought was settled. It happened on a Sunday morning. Lena received an email from a company she had recently partnered with for a marketing campaign. They were hosting a conference, new clients, new investors, an opportunity to grow. She accepted without a second thought. She wanted to focus on her career, not her past. But when she walked into that conference hall weeks later, surrounded by glass walls and polished floors, her breath caught. Cole was there. He stood near the entrance, tall, calm, every inch the man she remembered, but changed. His hair was shorter now, his expression sharper, colder. Time had polished him, but not softened him. He was speaking to someone, his voice steady and confident, the kind of voice that carried control. For a moment, Lena froze. She thought about leaving, about pretending she hadn't seen him. But their eyes met, and it was too late. The past had already found her again. He gave a faint nod, acknowledgement, not invitation, and turned back to his conversation. It should have made things easier, but instead, it left her uneasy. She realized then that she wasn't over him, not completely. Healing had taught her how to live without him, not how to forget him. Throughout the event, their paths crossed more than once. Short glances, polite nods, nothing more. Yet every time she saw him, old memories stirred. The rain, the stolen moment, the fallout. She wondered if he remembered too, or if she had simply become another ghost in his story. Later that evening, after most people had left, Lena found herself alone by the tall windows overlooking the city. The lights below flickered like tiny secrets. She thought she was alone until she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Cole's reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. He didn't say anything for a long time. The silence between them was familiar, heavy with everything unsaid. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, careful. He said he had seen her name on the guest list but didn't think she'd actually show up. Lena smiled faintly, a tired, knowing smile. She told him she almost didn't. He nodded once, as if understanding the weight behind her words. He mentioned that he'd moved overseas for a while, trying to rebuild things. It had been good for him, business was stable, life was calm. He didn't sound proud, just neutral, like someone describing a life he was still learning to live. Lena listened. Every word felt like a quiet goodbye wrapped in small talk. She told him she was doing better too, that she'd found peace, that she'd learned from everything. And for the first time since it all began, it felt true. Cole looked at her then, really looked, like he was searching for the girl who had once stood in the rain beside him. But that girl was gone, and they both knew it. What stood there now was someone wiser, quieter, less desperate to be seen. He said he was glad she was doing well. Then, without drama, without pain, he said goodbye. This time, Lena didn't feel broken. She didn't chase after him, didn't wish for what used to be. She simply stood there and watched him walk away, feeling something close to peace. When she left the conference hall later that night, the city air felt different, lighter, kinder. For the first time, she wasn't haunted by what could have been. She was free from it. Days passed, and she returned to her work with a clearer mind. Something inside her had shifted again. Closure doesn't always come in grand moments or perfect words. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through acceptance. She didn't need him to apologize, and she didn't need to punish herself anymore. But life, as always, had one more twist waiting. A few weeks later, Ava called. The number appeared on Lena's phone like a name she thought she'd buried. For a long moment, she stared at it, her chest tight. She wasn't sure if she should answer, but her fingers moved before her thoughts caught up. Ava's voice was different, Stronger, clearer, steadier. She said she was back in town for a short time, helping with a new charity foundation. She mentioned Cole's company had donated a large sum. Her tone didn't break when she said his name, which was both a relief and a surprise. She asked if they could meet for coffee. Lena hesitated but agreed. Part of her wanted to make peace. Another part wanted to prove to herself that she could face Ava without guilt swallowing her whole. The next day, they met at a small rooftop cafe overlooking the skyline. The wind was soft, and the air carried that calm weight that comes before something important. Ava looked different. Confident, lighter, like a woman who had fought her way through pain and come out shining on the other side. Their conversation began easy, safe. They talked about work, travel, small things that didn't matter. But beneath the surface, the truth still waited, silent and heavy. Eventually, Ava leaned back and looked at her, eyes calm but sharp. She said she knew more than Lena thought she did. She said time had given her clarity. Lena froze. Her pulse quickened, but Ava's expression didn't change. She said she had known something was off back then, long before the breakup. She didn't want to know details anymore. She just wanted honesty. Lena's throat tightened. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then she nodded, slow and heavy, as tears welled in her eyes. She didn't try to defend herself. She didn't make excuses. She simply said she was sorry. Silently, in her expression, in her stillness, in her shame. Ava didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply said she had already forgiven her. Not because it was easy, but because she refused to carry hate into her new life. That was the moment Lena realized forgiveness was never about the person who hurt you. It was about setting yourself free. When they stood to leave, Ava hugged her gently. It wasn't warmth. It was closure. As Lena watched her walk away, she felt something break open inside her. Something she didn't know she had been holding all this time. It wasn't pain anymore, it was release. And for the first time since everything fell apart, the air around her finally felt still. The silence between Ava and Nathan stretched for days that felt like months. They spoke, but never about what mattered. Every morning began with the same quiet tension. Polite greetings, small smiles, but behind them, a wall neither of them could climb. Ava felt the ache of betrayal fading into something else. Confusion. Because no matter how much she wanted to hate him, she still found herself missing the warmth of his voice, the way he used to reach for her hand without thinking. Cole noticed it too. The absence of her laughter haunted him. He had tried to give her space, but every time she walked past him with that forced calmness, he felt the weight of what he'd done press deeper into his chest. Lena's name was now a forbidden word in their home. No one dared to mention it. Not even Ava, though she still saw her face in every memory that used to make her smile. One evening, as Ava stood by the window of her apartment overlooking the city, Cole walked in quietly. The air was heavy, the same kind of silence that usually led to unspoken words. Ava didn't turn to face him, but she knew he was there. She could feel the hesitation in his steps. It had been weeks since they had talked about anything real. Cole finally spoke, his voice low and rough from guilt. He told her he didn't know how to start fixing something so broken, that no amount of apologies could undo what she had seen, or how he had made her feel. He told her he had ended everything with Lena the moment Ava walked in that day, that whatever happened wasn't what he wanted, even though he knew those words sounded like excuses. Ava listened in silence. The truth was, she had heard it all before. The remorse, the regret, the endless explanations that did nothing to erase the image burned into her mind. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she asked him a question that sliced through the room like glass. She asked if, even for a second, he had wanted Lena. Cole froze. He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. The hesitation told her everything she needed to know. Ava felt the sting rise again in her chest, the same one that had never really left since that night. She turned away from the window and walked past him, her eyes cold but calm. She said nothing more, because there was nothing left to say. That night, Cole slept on the couch. The distance between them became a living thing, breathing through the walls, whispering the things neither of them dared to say aloud. Days later, Ava received an invitation that made her pulse quicken. It was an exclusive fashion event, one she had dreamed of being part of since her early modeling days. It was the same event Lena used to talk about constantly, the one she had always said would change everything. Ava almost didn't want to go, but something inside her refused to stay hidden in heartbreak forever. The night of the event, she arrived glowing. Her hair slicked back, her dress elegant but sharp, a statement that screamed resilience. Cameras flashed, people turned, and for the first time since the betrayal, she felt alive again. But that feeling shattered the moment she saw Lena across the room. Lena was there, radiant, confident, and very much unbothered. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, everything else disappeared. Ava could see the arrogance in Lena's gaze, the silent taunt that said, "I won." But Ava didn't flinch. She walked past her, every step measured, her expression unreadable. Inside, though, her heart raced with a mixture of anger and pity. Later that evening, as Ava stood near the edge of the event hall, a talent director approached her, praising her poise and presence. The same director who had once been interested in Lena's career. Ava listened politely, but her attention shifted when she noticed Cole walk in. He wasn't supposed to be there. He came alone, scanning the room until his eyes found hers. Their gaze locked, and for a second, the noise of the event disappeared. Lena noticed too. She started moving toward him, but he didn't look her way. Instead, he walked straight to Ava. People turned to watch. The tension in the air was sharp enough to cut through the laughter and music. When he finally reached her, Cole spoke softly, almost as if they were the only two people there. He told her he wasn't there to win her back. Not yet. Not until she was ready to even look at him without pain. He said he just wanted to stand beside her again, even if it was from a distance, because she still meant everything to him. Ava didn't know what to feel. She could sense that this wasn't the same man she had caught in that cruel moment weeks ago. There was something quieter about him, like someone who had finally faced the truth about himself. But before she could respond, Lena's voice broke the air. Lena approached them, her tone honey-sweet but her words venomous. She spoke loud enough for those around to hear, throwing subtle remarks about how Cole was easily forgiven. How some people can't live without attention. Ava didn't react. She stood still, every inch of her posture radiating grace. But when Lena moved closer, Cole stepped between them. That small act said everything. It silenced Lena. It reminded her, and everyone watching, of where his loyalty truly stood now. Ava didn't need to say a word. She turned, thanked the director politely, and walked away with quiet dignity. Cole followed, keeping a respectful distance behind her, not daring to break the moment. Outside, under the soft glow of the streetlights, Ava finally stopped. She didn't turn around, but her voice was calm when she told Cole that she didn't know what forgiveness looked like yet. But she knew she didn't want to keep living with bitterness. She told him she needed time, space, and peace. Cole nodded, his eyes wet but steady. As she drove home that night, Ava felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Release. For the first time, she wasn't crying over what she lost. She was choosing herself. Lena might have won a few battles, but the war wasn't about a man anymore. It was about peace, dignity, and strength. And somewhere deep down, Ava knew Lena's time would come, because people like her always burned bright and fast. And eventually they burned out. It was only a matter of time. The weeks following the fashion event unfolded like a slow-burning reckoning. Ava had thought peace would come easily once she decided to let go of bitterness. But healing wasn't that simple. Some nights, she still woke up replaying the image of Lena's smug smile, or the look in Cole's eyes when he saw her again. But the difference now was that she didn't let those memories control her. She got up, went to work, and poured her energy into everything she had neglected while drowning in heartbreak. Her modeling agency noticed the change in her almost immediately. There was something sharper, more magnetic about her presence now. Not born from arrogance, but from quiet power. She no longer walked into a room seeking validation. She walked in as if she already owned it. The same people who had once pitted her after the scandal now whispered her name with admiration. Ava Matthews was back, but stronger. Cole watched all of it from the sidelines. He kept his distance, just as she asked, but he didn't disappear completely. Occasionally, she would catch a glimpse of him in places she didn't expect. At events, on magazine covers, or in quiet corners of restaurants they used to visit. He never approached, but his eyes always found hers, carrying the same mix of regret and longing. It wasn't desperation anymore. It was quiet respect. Lena, on the other hand, was spiraling, though she hid it well at first. After the event, she had hoped to capitalize on the attention, but the industry wasn't as forgiving as she thought. The same director who had once been interested in her now refused to return her calls. Word had gotten around about her affair with Cole, whispered gossip, half-truths, and rumors that painted her as the jealous friend who betrayed her own. It wasn't long before doors started closing one by one. At first, Lena told herself it was temporary, that she could charm her way back into everyone's good graces. But charm couldn't erase what people had seen that night at the event. Her confidence cracked when one of her upcoming shoots got canceled, followed by a brand collaboration she'd bragged about for months. She tried to reach out to Cole, hoping to reignite what she thought they had, but he ignored every message. The silence infuriated her. Meanwhile, Ava got a call from a luxury fashion house inviting her to be the new face of their campaign. The same brand Lena had been chasing for years. The irony wasn't lost on her. When she walked into that first meeting, she felt a quiet satisfaction, not from revenge, but from finally stepping into her own spotlight without Lena's shadow trailing behind her. But life has a way of forcing closure when it's least expected. One afternoon, as Ava was wrapping up a shoot, her manager walked in with a hesitant expression. He told her someone was waiting outside, said it was urgent. Ava didn't expect to see Lena standing there, dressed in a sharp but desperate attempt at sophistication, her eyes rimmed with fatigue. She looked different. Not the radiant, self-assured woman she used to be, but someone fraying at the edges. Lena asked for a moment, and though every instinct told Ava to walk away, she stayed. They moved to a quiet corner behind the studio, where the noise of the city faded. Lena started speaking quickly, her voice trembling beneath the surface. She said she didn't come to fight, that she only wanted to explain, that she didn't mean for things to go the way they did. Ava listened, arms folded, expression calm. She didn't interrupt. Lena talked about how it started, how she'd always felt like she was living in Ava's shadow, how every compliment Ava received felt like a reminder of her own insecurities. She said she thought if Cole chose her, it would finally make her feel enough. But all it did was leave her emptier than before. When she finally stopped talking, there was a long silence. Ava looked at her, not with anger, but with something close to pity. She told her softly that what Lena did wasn't about love or even jealousy. It was about brokenness. She said she forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because holding on to hate had already taken enough from her. Lena's eyes filled with tears, but Ava didn't reach out. Forgiveness didn't mean friendship, and some wounds weren't meant to be reopened. Lena nodded slowly, as if she understood, and then she left. Ava watched her walk away, not triumphantly, but peacefully. It was the first time in a long while she felt truly free. Later that week, Ava's new campaign launched. Her face was everywhere, billboards, magazines, and interviews. When people spoke her name now, they didn't mention betrayal or scandal. They talked about resilience, about grace under fire. Cole sent her flowers on the day of the campaign release, white roses, the same kind he used to bring her before everything fell apart. There was no note, just a single word on the tag. Proud. Ava smiled faintly when she saw it. She didn't call him, but for the first time, the thought of him didn't sting. It just felt warm, like something that had finally settled in its right place. That night, as she sat on her balcony watching the city lights shimmer below, she thought about everything that had happened. The friendship, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the healing. Every piece of it had led her to this moment. She realized that love wasn't always the grand, sweeping thing people wrote about. Sometimes it was quiet. Sometimes it was just choosing yourself after losing everything. And somewhere across the city, Lena sat in her small apartment, scrolling through social media, staring at Ava's campaign photo. For the first time, she didn't feel envy, only the heavy ache of regret. She realized too late that the woman she tried to destroy had only become stronger, while she had faded into the background. Life had come full circle. Ava had found peace, and Lena had finally faced the emptiness she had been running from. But what none of them knew, not Ava, not Cole, not even Lena, was that this peace wasn't the end. It was only the calm before the final reckoning that would test what forgiveness truly meant. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. It waits quietly for one last chance to rewrite the story. And that chance was closer than any of them realized. A few months passed, and life seemed to find its balance again. Ava's name had become synonymous with elegance and strength. Every magazine cover, every runway appearance carried her quiet power. The story of a woman who was broken, but not defeated. The world had no idea what she had endured behind the grace they now admired. Cole's company was expanding into new markets, and though they hadn't rekindled their relationship, there was an unspoken connection between them. Like two souls who had once burned too close to the fire, now walking carefully around the ashes. They texted occasionally, short and polite, but beneath every word lingered something fragile, something unfinished. For Ava, it was enough. She didn't crave grand gestures or apologies anymore. She was learning to enjoy the calm, the quiet mornings, the long drives, the peace of not constantly looking over her shoulder. For the first time in a long while, her life wasn't about anyone else's choices. But peace, no matter how beautiful, is rarely permanent. It began with whispers, the kind that travel fast in an industry built on gossip. A new magazine article was making rounds online, dragging up the past she thought she'd buried. Someone had leaked a story claiming her rise to fame was orchestrated, that she had used Nathan's wealth and influence to climb back into the spotlight after their breakup. There were pictures, twisted captions, and half-truths meant to make her look like the manipulator, not the victim. When Ava saw the headline, her stomach dropped. The pain wasn't in the words, it was in knowing who was behind them. The article had been submitted anonymously, but the tone, the phrasing, the details only one person could know. It all pointed back to Lena. It was almost unbelievable. After all the apologies, the tears, the talk of regret, Lena still hadn't let go. Ava sat quietly in her apartment, scrolling through the hateful comments online. She didn't cry this time. She just felt tired. Tired of being dragged through Lena's bitterness again. But this time, she refused to be the silent victim. She called her publicist, her manager, and her lawyer. Within hours, the story was traced back to a PR intern who had been paid off through a fake agency. The money trail led directly to Lena's account. The evidence was undeniable. Lena was confronted, and for the first time, she couldn't talk her way out of it. Her name spread across social media again, not as a star, but as a liar. Her agency dropped her. Brands pulled back, and suddenly, the woman who once wanted the world's attention found herself shunned by it. When Ava heard the news, she didn't feel triumphant. There was no satisfaction in watching someone destroy themselves. Instead, she felt a strange mix of sadness and closure. A week later, Lena showed up at her doorstep. No makeup, no mask, just exhaustion. Ava hesitated but opened the door. The silence between them was heavy, not with hatred this time, but with finality. Lena spoke first, her voice trembling. She said she didn't know why she did it again, that every time she tried to move on, she found herself haunted by Ava's face, by the life she couldn't have, by the version of herself she destroyed trying to compete with her best friend. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness this time. She just wanted to tell the truth before the world buried her completely. Ava listened quietly, her eyes soft but unreadable. She told Lena that she had forgiven her long ago, but forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean returning to the same place. Some people, she said, were lessons, painful, necessary lessons that teach you how to love yourself when someone else can't. Lena nodded slowly, her eyes wet. For a moment, she looked like the girl Ava had once trusted, before jealousy turned her into a stranger. She whispered a quiet thank you and walked away. Ava watched her disappear down the hallway, the sound of her footsteps fading like the closing chapter of a book. That night, Ava sat on her balcony again, the city lights stretching endlessly before her. Cole called for the first time in months. His voice was gentle, unsure, but warm. He said he'd seen the news, that he was proud of how she handled it with such grace. There was a pause before he asked if she would meet him for coffee sometime, not to talk about the past, but maybe about a new beginning. Ava didn't answer right away. She smiled faintly, looking out over the skyline. Life had taught her that not every story needed a perfect ending. Sometimes it just needed peace. She told him maybe someday when the time felt right. When the call ended, she leaned back in her chair, the soft hum of the city filling the silence. She thought about everything that had happened: love, betrayal, forgiveness, and the strength it took to stand again. Lena's downfall had finally run its course, not because Ava fought her, but because she stopped trying to. Some battles, she realized, are won by walking away. Ava Matthews had lost her best friend, nearly lost herself, and still managed to rise from it all. She didn't just survive betrayal, she transcended it. And somewhere deep down, she knew that was the real victory. As the night wind brushed against her skin, Ava whispered to herself, not in pain, but in quiet affirmation, that everything she had been through was never meant to destroy her. It was meant to transform her. And it did. Because in the end, the story was never really about the man or the betrayal or the revenge. It was about the woman who learned to choose herself every single time.